So I'm preparing to go and get my goggles on to cut up the onions, but after I'm going to do that at the end. Technically, I think onions and garlic are in the same food category. I'm not positive on that. My brain isn't working perfectly right now. I've tried these both in the oven and in the pan, and they work pretty much the same. I can actually monitor them better when they're in the pan, like to pan fry them. So I'm actually going to wash these and cut them up so they're ready to go. Now, if you don't have a microwave or don't want to use a microwave, you can get a little pan and heat it up in the oven, like a mini baking sheet, and put all of your leftovers on a pan and put some aluminum foil or another lid over top. So you don't have to heat everything in the microwave. I tend to heat things in the microwave, but you can also not have a microwave and heat them up. In Brazil, we didn't have microwaves, so we learned how to heat everything on the stove. That's a funny shape. I don't know if I have to cut this much off. I'm just trying to get through this so that you can see what it's going to be like. So I'm cutting them into quarters. So they do better when there's more surface area because they're going to absorb the rest of the tastes and the spices. If I just tried to cook this is how we would have it growing up. They would just boil these. They just tasted awful. They'd smell the whole house up. But if you cook them with a lot of garlic, and then also have garlic sauce or mayonnaise or cheese sauce, that makes all the difference. Everything tastes better with cheese sauce, but that's just because I love cheese sauce. And so I'm just cutting them in general into quarters. It's not very exact here. Some of these are bigger, so I'm cutting them more often. What happens when you put this, if you cook them in the oven, is these burn, all these extra little ones. So they can get pretty black. Okay, I'm almost done these ones. So temporarily, I'm going to put this in here, and I'm going to season them when I have the real garlic and the parsley cut up. Okay, potatoes. I am going to do two things with potatoes. I'm going to cook some in a glass container, and I'm going to boil some because I run out of potatoes quicker, because since I'm not eating pastas and rice and other breads and grains, then I'm eating more potatoes. But I don't eat a lot of potatoes, but I like to have it with every meal. And the first day you make the roast potatoes always tastes best, and after that, day 2 or 3, the roast potatoes just don't taste as good. Mashed potatoes I can cook, and those taste good 5-6 days later. So I do boiled potatoes, which I can pan fry and make hash browns. So half of them I'm gonna, half of them I'm gonna boil, and half of them I'm gonna roast. Now I have not washed these first. I'm going to cut out anything that doesn't look that great. Cut out the little eyes. I think they call that the eyes when you would put this in the garden. It will grow from that place. So I'm just cutting off all the parts that don't look the greatest. And then I'm going to wash them. Cut off those eyes. And there we go. It's really, really hard to get potatoes to look perfect because of how they grow in the ground. And I always think, well, that little bump, it was going around a rock or something, like it's not perfect. The soil that they're grown in, that's a lot of times why they're bumpy, is it? I've seen carrots like that where they've had to grow around something and the carrot will have a wonk. So I always think, oh, well, there was a rock that the potato had to grow around. So they aren't perfect, and there's always dirt. Can't get all the dirt out. I'm pretty sure these are pre-washed. I forget, but it's hard to get all the dirt out. Okay, so half of them are going to be boiled. And as I said in the first part of the video or another video, all of the things I boil, I keep all of that water, either for gravy or sauces or soup or stew, anything like that. So I'm just, same principle as I've said with the other things. When you're cutting things up, you want them fairly uniform so that they each cook at the same rate, each piece. If I put this and this together and I tried to boil it, this is going to be overboiled and this would be underboiled. Or, I'd have to cook it a lot and then this one's going to be, mush. So I'm cutting them into generally bite-sized pieces to boil. And these are easy to eat. It's a bite-sized piece. It's one forkful. That's sort of how I see it. So these will go brown if I don't put them in water. I've been collecting more and more containers because I'm cooking this way. So I try to find glass containers when I'm, bulk cooking, so that because glass doesn't flavor things. I'm not getting residual plastic or anything like that. So these are going to be the ones that are going to be boiled. So they're just bite-sized pieces in general. And then I'm going to show you how to, I found this recipe on Pinterest. Pinterest is my go-to for recipes because everything has a picture and I love pictures. Let's see, I'm going to use this one. And so it was called potato wedges with cheese or something like that. So that's what I'm going to show you how to make because they're my favorite lately. And okay, so these I'm going to put in water. So I'm cutting those up right at the very end because they will go brown if I don't put them right in the oven, and I'm not quite ready to turn the oven on yet because I haven't brought any of the meats out. So I'm actually going to wait and I'm going to cut up the onions. So I got to go get my glasses. You will laugh about this. Yep, I got to put these on. But they work. I got them at, they have to be really good seal. I got them at a Home Hardware. I don't know what brand it was. But otherwise I cry every time and I'm bawling my eyes out. Even I've tried, getting them cold. I've tried cutting them under running water or starting them off under running water. I'm just very sensitive to it. So you want to take off as many layers as you can because those you can't actually chew. I don't know if you've had that where you try to eat that outside layer and you just can't chew it. Okay. We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay. So for onions, you don't cut all the way through. You just cut with the tip of your knife like that, and then you rock your knife like this and make tiny, tiny, tiny pieces like that. So I'm going almost all the way through. I learned this, when I was like 18 at Cook's College, and I haven't forgotten it. All the way through, and then I rock it. And then when you're almost at the end, then I chop those. Yeah, I feel that outside layer is going to be hard to chew, but we'll see. You do have to waste a little bit of the onion to be able to get to that layer that's easier to eat. If the knife doesn't go through it very easy and sort of slides off, then just take one more layer of the onion off. Okay, pretty uniform. can always go back through it. Now, my favorite thing to do with onions lately is to fry them up. And now I don't want to take these off yet until I've decided where these are going to go. So some are going to go in there. That's the cabbage. So onions and cabbage take about the same amount of time to cook. And the rest I'm going to actually pan fry because that's my favorite right now. Sometimes I leave it on for a little bit because it's still in the air. There's some dirt. There you go. Some dirt water from the potatoes. What else do I need to do? So I think that garlic will be next. We're very close. We're very close. Now garlic, my wrists aren't always strong to use the garlic press. I do have a mini food processor that I've been using lately. This garlic is more frustrating than some smaller pieces. I buy this in bulk, so I get it really, really, really cheap. You know, it turns out to like 10 cents a clove. It's very, very cheap. Well, maybe not that. 20 cents, I meant 20 cents for a head of garlic. Very cheap. So I do waste a little bit because I'm cooking so much of it. So yeah, if you don't want to waste so much because it's more expensive and you don't have a way to get it cheap, I also recommend don't buy pre-cut garlic. I've bought that in the past. Oh, I can feel the onions starting to kick in. Goodness cry. In the past, I have tried buying that pre-cut garlic, but the seasonings, the preservatives, whatever they put in that syrup that it sits in, just totally changes the flavor of the garlic, and I don't like that. So if in doubt, I just take the time and I cut a bunch of it up from scratch like this. But if you don't have access to cheap garlic, like inexpensive garlic, and that's the only option, then maybe rinse it off, you know, like rinse off that oil, or I don't know what it is. But I just didn't like the flavor of it at all. So I'd prefer to take a little bit of time. I listen to lots of podcasts. So I have my, you know, my earbuds in all the time and listen all the time. So I don't mind taking time doing this, also knowing that I'm not going to be cooking for a couple days. So that helps me endure this. If people think, oh, it takes too long to cook. Yeah, it does take a long time to cook, but then I don't have to cook later. And I would much rather make a big mess and also multiply my efforts in that I'm reusing pans. Sometimes, like especially the frying pan, you'll see that I cook multiple things in that. So I got off on a tangent there. I'm trying to think of what I was saying before. Anyways, the garlic, if you can find it at not too expensive a price, it just tastes so much better if you can cut it from scratch. Cut it up yourself like this. Then it will taste better. But if you can't, then go ahead and buy the pre-cut stuff. Now this is assuming that you have access to a nice kitchen. The kitchen I had before we moved to this house was a lot smaller and wasn't as bright. And so this one's great to cook in, but if you have a small kitchen, this is totally doable. And you just have to be a little bit more creative. And maybe you don't have a lot of pots and pans, then you just batch cook, and that you cook one thing and then cook the next thing and then cook the next thing. And it might take 4 hours to cook for 4 days or 5 days instead of 1 hour. This is tedious. I get impatient, so I have to distract myself with, that's like I say, I always am listening to podcasts all the time. So that helps with the boredom, because this is really boring. And so we're getting there. That's 1 clove. So yeah, this is a lot of garlic, and you might think that's a lot, but I'm using it for instead of dried garlic, right? So I have dried garlic that I bought, but you know, I don't necessarily know that it's all 100% dried garlic. Maybe they've got other stuff in there. So this, I know, this is this idea of the one ingredient cooking. I know exactly what's going in the food I'm eating. If you eat out a lot and you don't have access to, you don't want to do this, I'll just talk about that a little bit. If you eat out a lot, which is awesome because you save time, and but you don't know what's going on in the kitchen. You don't know how the food's being prepared. You don't know if they're cooking things that are pre-made, you know, from a package. When I worked at a restaurant way back when, the cheese sauce was just a powder, you know, with lots of chemicals in it. The gravy was just a powder. We mixed it in the water, like nothing. It was not one ingredient, and you didn't know where it was coming from. And so many, but that's what restaurants have to do in order to have the volume. So I understand that, but it's just not. Yeah, you just don't know really what you're eating. So you have to trust, you know. And there's all these food preparation services, which are great when you're busy, but you just don't know what are they cooking? Are they sitting in their, you know, in their big kitchen doing everything from scratch, or are they buying it from a company, a factory that has, you know, produced it in bulk and added a whole pile of chemicals? So I know exactly what's going in this food, you know, because it's one ingredient, and I know what I'm adding. Now, this is 95% of my diet is this way. The other 5%, well, there's a bit of rot. I've never seen rot on them. Usually they just dry out. 95%, or say 90% of my diet is this way. I do eat nuts, I eat dairy, I eat meat, I eat fish, I eat eggs. I'm an omnivore. And so because of that, I get bored with just one ingredient foods and one ingredient meat. So I do have bacon, and I do have sausage and cheese, and all of those things are processed foods. They've all come from a factory, and so they aren't straight from the farm. And so if I say I'm clean, I'm eating clean, it's 90% of the time. To me, this is clean, and that it's one ingredient. There's no added anything to it. It's clean, which is, that's a weird word to use for clean. I've actually heard of clean keto and dirty keto. I hate that. Why would I say, oh, I'm eating dirty this week? That just sounds awful. So I don't like that phrase. Whoever came up with that, I think you could have thought of another phrase, but I think it's meaning, you know, are you 100% doing it, or are you cheating? But I don't like the idea of dirty. So it's like, to me, it's like, well, 90% of the time I'm eating one ingredient foods, and the other 10% I'm eating processed foods. That's basically the logical wording. You know, it's not putting any shame on anything and just saying one's bad or one's good. It's, you know, one is processed and one is not processed. One's in the factory, and a company is earning money off of that food that is being produced in the factory. The farmers are earning money off of the food that is the one ingredients. Unfortunately, the farmers don't earn enough money, and that's a really sad part of most of our societies, that the farmers don't earn the money they should for the amount of work that they do. But I won't get political on this video. Anyways, so here we are. We're done all of our garlic. And yes, as you can see, I've thrown a little bit of these ends off. You can pick them out if you want. I keep seeing reels online of quicker ways to cut garlic out. I don't know how they do it. It's like magic, because I can't ever make those. I can't ever reproduce that. So now I'm going to wash my knife off and show you how to cut these, to mince these without a mincer. So this is 2 bunches of garlic, lots of cloves. And so I'm using this knife that has the rounded edge so that I can rock it back and forth. I'm keeping my hand on top. I'm not going to cut myself that way, and it helps put some pressure down. And it's sort of rotating it around like this. I learned this back in cooking college over 3 decades ago. and it's something I never forgot how to do. You can do this for anything you're wanting to mince. Like if you're wanting to mince onions, it basically acts the same way. So I'm just cutting it smaller and smaller. Round and round I go. If your knife is totally straight, just keep your other hand away and then just go like that. Like if you aren't able to rock it, then you can sort of still do it. So yeah, when my wrist is hurting, because I've had carpal tunnel in the past, so certain things like the garlic press can hurt my wrist when I'm doing that much. If I'm just doing one clove, then it's fine, but this is a lot of garlic. And this lasts for at least a week or two. And so what I'll show you is how I fry it up, and then I put it in a container, and then I can just sprinkle it on anything that I want to put it on. And I'm going to be adding it to a few other things. So it's getting there. When it's close, then this is what I learned how to do, is you add a little bit of salt. And the salt has some grip to it. Of course, whatever you're going to be adding this to is totally fine that you have the salt. So I'm going to press down. I don't know if you can see this. I'm pressing down. And so the salt helps give it some grip. And so as I'm going along the edge of the knife is also helping to mince it. So I'm pushing down and sort of pushing the edge of the knife along, and the salt helps to grind it into smaller pieces. You can hear the salt. It wasn't very much salt, because whatever you're adding this to, you're going to be already seasoning anyway. So, but that's how to mince it, is sort of pushing down. I'm okay with a few bigger chunks. And of course it shrinks a tiny bit when you're cooking it too. So I'm pushing down with this hand on top. I have never yet found a mincer that works super well, because they squeeze out the sides and it doesn't get it all down. The last one I have is the best one I've had so far. This one here. But even still, as you push it down, some stuff squeezes out the side. So they haven't invented a perfect one. Anyways, I don't mind doing it by hand, like I have mentioned before. I'm always listening to podcasts, so I don't mind taking this time out. There we go. That's a lot of garlic. So I'm going to put it in a little bowl for later. This is one of these things that I'm going to be frying up in my big pan.